We have to accept this fact, like as an undergrad, you are there to learn and not to perform. The biggest red flag in a lab is when you talk to students, they do not seem motivated, even though they do exemplary work. I do think university does matter, but not at the cost of your individuality and skills.
Welcome back to the Purple Science Podcast. I'm Srishti Chipre, and you are listening to the part 2 of the two-part series with Mr. A. Anand Ojha. In the last episode, we have heard him talk about his backstory of getting into science, his undergrad, and his experience getting research internships, not just in the country, but in fantastic labs across the world. In this episode, we focused on his PhD, his work experience both in industry and the academia, which one he prefers, where his interests lies in, and also what he learned from mentoring undergrads, what kind of challenges they face, what is that they should do in order to have a successful research career, and a lot more. I know that you will get a lot of useful tips and bits from this conversation, just like I did. So sit back and enjoy the episode.
Right now, the science is not from the science of 1960s, where if you are an expert in physics, you cannot move into chemistry or biology. Now the science happens in a way, if you're an expert in one thing, then there's always a chance for you in other fields because the science is more and more interdisciplinary now. So if you think there's a grad student and thinks, okay, there's no application of my work in my field, there's always a chance, there's always a possibility that his expertise could be used in other areas of research too. And that's what people should think about, get motivated and work further because none of the research is going to waste anyways.
This is incredible. This is incredible. This is not common. I talk to a lot of students actually,
Mhm.
and it's so easy for them to, especially in research, it's so easy for them to lose sight, lose their interest, their initial interest in science, and they get distracted. But this pattern of really looking, okay, these are the skills that I have, these are the skills I can enhance and improve on, and this is what I can do with what I have. It's incredible. And I have a bunch of follow-up questions, but
Sure.
I'll start with you've received most of your research training in India
Hmm.
before, of course, you moved abroad. So,
Hmm.
what are some advantages and disadvantages of training in India, so to speak, and how same or different is the work culture?
Okay, so I'm a big proponent of the value of education in India because I think still I'm teaching a lot of students here and I see how the education goes. I still think and I still believe the education given to us in India is far better and far rigorous than any other university or region in the world. And this is direct evidence that Indian students, wherever they go, they are extremely incredible. So I still think the education is good. It's the best. But what happens is the lack of motivation. Professors in a university do not realize that the world is changing at a very fast rate. Now the thing is, you do not have to make a student sit and work for 9, 8, or 7 years to get a PhD. You know, you also need to understand that a smart student can sometimes not come to the lab and can work from anywhere and still deliver the results. You also need to understand that a grad student can have his own personal life and can be present on social media as well as to his research. So the transition is slow. And that's where the environment factor comes to play in. There are lots and lots of example of exemplary students doing exemplary good in science, but not happy with the life. And that's where things have to change in the Indian subcontinent as a whole. That's the thing why, you know, you must have seen there are so many posts on LinkedIn about the PhD requirement in good labs. They are constantly sending out job advertisements, PhD advertisements, and the number of candidates interviewing for a PhD position is becoming less and less in India. It's not because students are less interested in research. No, it's not because of that. It's because of the outcome they see in the lab. The biggest red flag in a lab is when you talk to students, they do not seem motivated, even though they do exemplary work. The publishing rate in India is higher than in the US, but still, the life or the happiness factor is some or the other way missing. I would have loved to do a PhD in India, but since I have been to so many places, I've done my internships in IITs, in ISC, in GNCASR, and ISCS. They are one of the best institutes in not in India, in the world. But what I get the feedback from the PhD students, because I'm gonna see them how they are doing in their life. And I would really do not I would not want to do a PhD in that environment. And that's where the professors, it's a humble request to them, if someone is listening, they need to make sure that mental health, happiness, satisfaction are even more important than doing research. And that's where even average Indian student or average student does better things here as opposed to India. That's my only problem. And I think there would be a solution soon, because in this age, nothing is in private. Everything is in public. People see things, they respond things, and they try to change things as well. So I'm hopeful of this. Let's see what brings in the future. But I still feel Indian professors are those people who have lived their life at least a decade outside of India, in those premier institutes at least, and they know the value of why they did good. They did good because they were allowed to do what they wanted to do. And if this freedom is given to the students in their research lab in India, then things will be even more, and it would be even more better than what it is now. So I won't say it's a misery. I won't say it's the best, the current research scenario in India, but I would say like it's better than the other countries, but not as good as in Germany, in Switzerland, in South Korea, or in the US. It definitely can improve.
A very, very important point that you bring in here. Of course, a student needs to know, first of all, what they wanted and then be allowed to do that. That is very important. Now, another thing is doing a PhD is very important decision, as you said, that students make because it directly affects both one personal life and one's professional life for also a significant amount of time. So, what did you consider before doing a PhD, and what do you think people should consider before going for it?
My preferences for a PhD, as usual, was to find a good lab. But before that, I specifically chose universities in places where it had a good weather.
So
So,
I think you'll also have to elaborate on what a good lab
yes,
is.
yes, I will. I will. So, looking at one of the things what students do is you look at the Times Higher Education ranking, you look at the QS World rankings, and they say, okay, my university is the top 50, top 100, top 20, MIT, Princeton, Stanford, Harvard. That's one of the ways to look into it, and that's not a bad choice at all. The second option, what we do is look into the number of citations a certain professor has. And the number of citations is kind of directly related to how successful lab is. So it is one of the ways to quantify the success of a scientist. So you go through the list of highly cited authors in the world, highly cited scientists in the world, and then you choose your field where you do want to do research, and you choose your labs. The third thing what we look into is ask your seniors first of all, see your seniors, how successful they are, and in your own research field, and ask them which lab did they graduate from. That's kind of a direct way of looking into things. And my priority was mostly I'm motivated by the weather. Like I like sunny, warm weather, and California is one of the places where you get more sunshine than the rest of the states in the US. That's something I always wanted to. And California is a host to many good universities, especially UC Berkeley, UC SF, UC LA, USC, UCSD. Then you have Stanford. You have so many good universities here. So I my choice was clear. I will look into the better performing labs in one of the best institutions, provided uh, the weather, the scenic view, and the climate where I can travel a lot. So that's something I look into, but I give you the option. How can a student figure out what are the things they're looking for? Are they happy with the institution's rank? Are they happy with their seniors' performance? Or are they happy with the number of citations a professor has in his lab? So these are a few of the parameters one can look into in finding a good suitable lab for himself.
So the thing is that most of the students, a majority of the students, and I'm not even talking about the ones who are in ISOs or ISC or they are
Hmm.
exposed to some of these greater opportunities. If and we have talked about this in our previous episodes, of course, they
Hmm.
are not privileged enough to see if the lab is good, if the professor is good, or if they are going into a prestigious institute, because all
Hmm.
they want is that they apply for a bunch of places so that they get into at least one, and even that is difficult because
Hmm.
they've never had the kind of exposure that someone sitting in ISER would have, and they don't know. So it's so easy to lose sight of the what science is to them and why were they interested in first place, and then it becomes a survival question.
Hmm.
But you have some experience mentoring undergrad, so I want to ask you, what are some challenges you saw undergrads facing, and what, according to you, do we really need to do in order for them to have a seamless and also a less perplexing career, so to speak?
Okay, so to answer your first question about people who do not have, who are not privileged enough to be accredited to ISERs, NICERs, or ISCs, I would just say one thing. Like, I have countless examples, students coming from Amity University, Sharda, SRM, who are doing fantastic PhDs here, who are doing fantastic MS, getting into Apple, Meta, etc., etc. The thing is not about your university. Yes, it does have an impact initially because your CVs look much better when you have the tags of Indian institutes, IITs, IIMs, and ICERs, and whatever starts with Indian Institute. But the thing is, if you think you missed that opportunity, there's always a second window. And how do these students come through these is they know like they are not from such a privileged university. What they can do is find internships, find research professors who can help them get to the point from where they can launch themselves. One of the ways to do it is to, when you complete your degree, you can always sit for 1 year. You can always work in a lab where you can get out with a publication. One of the ways to match with students coming from these ISA backgrounds, and then make your not just your CV interesting, but that can drag into motivation because a student who is from universities which are lesser known universities joins a lab for an internship and he sees all the students either from IITs, he see how they're performing, and that's where the thing works. Your environment helps you become what you are right now. And the two ways I say is associate yourself to a lab which performs well and try to be scientifically successful by either playing a part in one of the publication, a second author, third author, or just strike out with a very good paper out of yourself. And then you are not only equivalent to ICE students, you are even better than them. And that's how these people, these students, are performing much better than so many IITs and ISA graduates. So the whole point comes down to how motivated you are and how you keep yourself to the pace of this ever changing world. Develop a skill which is not uh, easily available. For example, when we work with chemistry, people, students especially, are not so much acquainted with computer science. Still in India, it happens. So you develop a skill along with chemistry, intensive chemistry knowledge, and a skill which is computer science, which is programming, C++, Python, any one of the language, and then you become an invaluable asset. That's how you make yourself stand from other people, and that also defines how much really desperate or motivated you are to do good in life, and that's how you become way better than others. So I do think university does matter, but not at the cost of your individuality and skills. And that's where that all makes a difference. It's all about we being overwhelmed with the idea of other doing better things. We have to accept this fact, like as an undergrad, you are there to learn and not to perform. And that is where students find it very difficult. Students, especially senior students, grad students, even master students who are in the lab, have to make them feel comfortable and try saying and letting them know that we all went through the same phase and we all are still dumb and trying to learn. No one is smart because there cannot be an absolute smartness. Everyone is relative, and since you are you came here to learn, and that's how you perform. So first, the first thing is to learn, and learning comes of age. It doesn't happens in a split of a moment. So that's where the thing is, and that's where the problem is. The most important challenge is not about a student having difficulty in learning. That's about how he feel overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed seeing a lot of things which I don't know. And that's where seniors come in. That's where professors come in, mentors come in. You have to make them feel, take them to a coffee, make them feel comfortable, although there are boundaries that you need to respect. That's how you make them feel comfortable. And once they're comfortable, then they get to know their skills better because they're still exploring the idea of doing science. They're exploring which areas they're interested in, and they're exploring what skills they need to develop. So that's the idea, and that's the challenge.
Makes sense, makes sense. So in hindsight, if you say, your career path seems really straight and extremely focused. So right from studying in ISER to all the internships and all the certifications you've received, and now your PhD, of course. Was it like this always? And if not, what are some challenges or dilemmas that you faced? And of course, what kept you going despite these challenges?
I would say it's not a straight path. Even a circle looks like a circle because you are seeing it from a third dimension. A circle is also assimilation of many straight lines in a zigzag manner. So the thing is, the best way to think like this is there's a normans or some law in economics. I'm forgetting that name. That is, the more you uh, get off the trajectory, the more is the rate of you getting off the trajectory even more. So you, even if you are off your trajectory of your planned career, you do not have to go too far away. Like you cannot completely change what you started with and what you are trying to do. For example, you can go from getting a BSc degree to a B Tech or an M Tech, but you cannot directly jump into and getting a CA degree. That's where the thing is. So obviously there are phases where you get depressed, where you don't know what to do with your life, and it happened to me as well, and it happens to everyone. The thing is, you should trust yourself. To the point is, whatever you have earned till now did not come by chance. It came by hard work. Your degree is not a waste. It is a sign of how much efforts you have put into it. Obviously, the grades do not matter much. So, but you have earned it, and it's for yourself. That is the constant reminder you need to give yourself. PhD is a big commitment, and if you're not prepared for it, you should wait till you find yourself that you're prepared. Because once you're into it, there's no coming back. You will either end up destroying your career, or you will end up as a very good solved creature. So that's something that you need time and space to think. So I would suggest that's the best option. If you're not sure of something, then take your time off, do things, and arrange your thought in a process where you think, okay, I have four options I can do. I'll try eliminating all the options one by one so that I end up with just one option. And then that option is your motivation to go forward. That's what I think is the best way to do. I wanted to do an IES, but I was always afraid of what if I do not crack the examination in my first attempt. So if you have the fear, then you are lacking the confidence. And that's how I decided okay, after my master's, I'll go for another research and I'll do this because I want to do this and I won't be fearful. So I dropped the idea of going to Delhi and preparing for IS examination and then coming. And because I was kind of, I had huge expectations from ISIS, like because you see lectures from on the YouTubes from MIT's, Harvard's. You see those professors, those exemplary speech, the big words, the motivational words. But when you come to an Indian institute, you find it's not as what you expected. But then it takes time for you to get adapted. So I was kind of depressed, and everyone is. And that's how you push yourself and get the best of what conditions are offered to you.
So what you said just now is very, very important because students often think that stepping into an institute or an internship will enable some magic. If some magic will happen to them and their life will change. It's not the
Hmm.
case most of the times. It
Yeah.
it will be the same process where you have to hard work and keep going. So yes,
Hmm.
ICERs or anywhere else that you reach, it's never an end point. It's not like, okay, now I'm here, so everything is sorted. You have to.
Now, as the life progresses, it becomes even more difficult. And why people
Absolutely.
say, why our elders say it becomes easy, because you are becoming an expert each and every day. You do the same thing again and again. And that's why life doesn't become easy as you go and grow older. You get a PhD degree, it is not the end. You have to go in and do something that is not done before in the world. It's become even more difficult. Then you become a professor, you become a CEO. It goes, the complexity increases every day. But because you are also patching up with it, making up with this by becoming an expert. So you have to constantly improve yourself. And the moment you do not evolve, the moment you do not improve, that's where life becomes depressing. You get depressed and you start seeing other options. You start seeing how beautiful the world is except yourself. You start comparing, and that's something called people suffer from, and that's the imposter syndrome. So to avoid that, you know, just try to live one day at a time and do something new that you have not done yesterday. That's all I think should be in an ideal case. But you know,
That's very nicely said. I do agree to that. So, transitioning to some other phase of your life very quickly, how was your
mhm,
experience working in the industry in the US? So, you briefly mentioned about that in your previous response, but do you
mhm.
plan to go back to the industry? And if you do, why? And if you would not like to go back, why not?
I would not like to go to the industry, not because industry is bad or it is a bad experience. I would not like to go to the industry because I would like to go to the scientific academic community more than I like the industry. I had pretty much good experience, and in 7 days from now, I am working with Johnson and Johnson for their research in cancer. So I'm doing one another internship, which is paying me really good, like really, really good. But the thing is, it's not just the money that should be in mind when you want to see a long-term goal in your life. Obviously, a professor makes lesser money than the same guy who would work in industry. But there are other things too. And who said professors cannot be a millionaire? There are so many examples of great scientists becoming great entrepreneurs. So that's what you envision for yourself on a long goal. Yeah, in a shorter term, people would have chosen industry because it pays you really well. If I choose academia, I'm choosing not because I'm not industries are not hiring me. It's because my love for science is more than my love for industries. So that's something, and that's a choice. Everyone is free to make an independent choice because, irrespective of what, money really matters because that's something makes you happy. Everyone, me or the someone. But I would say, like, to keep me motivated every day, waking up at 5 a.m. because I want to, and not because I need to go to the industry to work, is something which is intrinsic. So I would rather choose academia, be a professor, rather than working in industry. But that's a personal choice. And if I do not get those opportunities, then for sure I have to come back to industry because I will have little options left then.
Yes, yes. So at the end of the day, what is more important is problem solving, and it's all about that, whether you choose one path or
Yes,
the other. Yeah.
yes, yes. When you see a
So
research paper, that's where you see your name and you see, okay, you have tried to answer some of the questions the world is still working on. You feel good.
yeah, that's true. So just to sum up our previous conversation, what do you think we need to do differently in India so that students can take more informed decisions and we get better quality researchers? But more importantly, how can we retain our talent in the country? Because people do usually prefer to go out. And as you rightly said, the all the professors or researchers that you see in India today, they have gone abroad to study or to work at least at one point of their career, which is okay. But what can we do better to retain our talent?
Just give them the respect which they own because they do work really hard. Give them the time to smile and make them feel they're important. They are not students because they are students. They are at the age of 30, someone is getting a PhD degree is because they want it. They want to be called as a doctor of philosophy. Why PhD is a doctor of philosophy? Because you are expert enough to derive and understand the philosophy of the research topic that you have done your PhD in. And that's where the thing will become different. Professors, I'm not asking professors to go and have beer and wine and whiskey with your students. At least give them the space, give them the freedom, and they're not laborers. We are not laborers. We are independent researchers. We are living on a stipend, but we deserve the respect that we deserve it. And once that's happened, you will see fundamental change in the entire PhD system, which will also transform into the education system. Because not all of the PhDs get into professorial positions, not all of them get into academia. They get into industries, they get into teaching, they get into a lot of universities. And this whole, the top to down bottom approach will change how education really looks in India. That's where the change can happen. You can have a bottom to top, or you can have a top to bottom. Because I see these things happening in universities, I would say it should happen from top to bottom. So, and these professors are just us. In a few years, if everything works well, I'll be a professor. I'll try to do what I have said just right now. Respect them and respect the assigned. Do not make them feel uh, bad about themselves. You know, and 8 hours of work and living the other 8 hours of your life. If you remove the sleeping 8 hours, 8 hours sleeping, they deserve those 8 hours with anyone they want to, with their family, with their girlfriends, with their friends. Let them live a life, because in a campus life, it's very difficult to isolate your personal life with your professional or scientific life, and that what makes the whole issue of depression. So that's something that needs to change. And if given the opportunity, coming back to India and working as a professor, for sure, like uh, I would try to do, or I would at least tell my colleagues to do, to respect the students more. The more they are happier, the more is the output. The more they are stressed, the more is the forced, they feel it is forced on them. So that's what. Also, you would also understand, like when giving a PhD degree, it is said the university confers the PhD onto a student. So the university who is giving a PhD degree is gratified itself. So the university feels they are, it's on them. They feel gratified. They feel happy. That's what it says. It confers the degree onto a student. So it's the literal meaning is they respect the students, and that's what can change, will change if everything goes well. And that's what I think should be the first thing to do, rather than working on the curriculum, rather than working on other things. Education is something which can be changed from top to bottom, and still you produce the same batch of students, because it's the intelligence quest, it's the capacity or the motivation that helps the students to become proficient in what they're learning. It's not the material, it's the environment, it's the motivation, it's the professors, it's the role models that play a part.
Very true, very true. I really love the choice of words. Students, they need to be respected. They need an open playground where they can explore. And all we want from institutions or from professors is that they provide a healthy environment, and we will do, like, we will flourish greatly in that's all we
Yeah.
want. Yeah. So this is something that I like to ask every guest that comes on my podcast. I'm sure that it will be interesting to listen this from you. With the experience that you now have, if you were to relive your undergrad days, what would you do differently?
Actually, nothing. Because chaos is the most important part of anyone's life, and you are coming from a family which where you're well protected. You have your parents, your siblings. You're all set to go for a college and or a university, and then you feel the entire chaos, the world of chaos onto you. You make random choices, you make random decisions, and that's where the beauty of life is, because that's the chaos. And the second law of thermodynamics says, let the chaos live more. The more the time goes on, the more the chaos also, the more is the chaos, the more is the stability in life. And that's where I would say I would love to be in the chaos again and take random decisions, no matter what the results are, because at the end, you mature yourself with knowledge and learning. So, in the end, even though I take multiple different steps, I would have reached the same spot that I'm here in right now. Yeah, plus minus, you could say 5 to 10% error, but that's what I love about the life. It's unpredictable, and when you are in your late teens and early 20s, that's the best part of anyone's life.
That is it for the two-part series with Mr. A. Anand Ojha. I learned a lot from this conversation. I hope you did too. If you have any questions for him, you can write to us on our social media and we'll try our best to reach out to you. And also, if you want to nominate someone to be on the podcast and someone that you'd like to listen from, let us know. We are on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter, and you can also email us. See you in the next episode with another amazing story in science. Thanks for tuning in to the Purple Science Podcast. We share stories every Tuesday. Our inbox is always open for your feedback, and our DMs across all social media platforms linked in the description are open to your unique stories. If you know somebody who might benefit from this, do share the podcast with them and spread the joy of learning.